And really, New Orleans is the American dream. Everyone always talks about New York and they say, you know, New York is the melting pot of all America. And I know that's probably how you guys talk. But what we know is, and feel free to laugh whenever I get what we know is New Orleans is a true melting pot. Because in New York, everybody's separate. So you've got Harlem, you've got Spanish Harlem, you've got the Upper West Side, you've got the Lower East Side, the village where all the artists live, and you've got the rich people over here on the East Side. Where New Orleans, everyone lived together. And it's that thing that sort of made America, and out of that came what we know as jazz. Really, there were three kings of New Orleans. A guy named Sidney Bechet was so important in the development of jazz. Then there was a guy named Jelly Roll Morton, who was really one of the important founders of what jazz was. And Jelly Roll Morton sort of was right there at the beginning because he used to play piano in these houses. How would I say that for a Rotary is a respectful issue? These were houses that things happened in. They were
knocking shops.
Knocking shops. Knocking shops. Let me use this because I'm thinking this would work well. How about they were full service entertainment centers? Would that work? Can I say that here at Rotary? Well, this is where this piano player, Jelly Roll Morton, refined and honed his skills because he had a way of playing jazz that would sort of entice these young ladies to dance for their customers, if you get what I'm saying. And this is where actually jazz got its bad name. It was actually called for many years the devil's music. You might have heard that. And that's why the respectability of jazz never got to that upper level. And it's because of people and where it was born. In fact, New Orleans was interesting because they never cared about where music was born. So they would play jazz and they would add church songs to it. So they'd play songs like Just a Closer Walk with Thee, Down by the Riverside, and so many others. And people thought, well, that's blasphemy. You're putting together two things from, you got the devil's music and you're playing religious music with them. New Orleans never cared about that. It became a true melting pot because New Orleans had, at its peak, more opera houses than any city in America. They had the great brass bands like the Eagle and the Olympia brass bands. They had these houses that we talked about, like Pete Lala's Cafe, Lulu White's Mahogany Hall. You've heard about all these great nightclubs in New Orleans, all these great orchestras that they had, and all of this music, the Zydeco music, the Cajun music, it all came together to make what we call jazz. Then there was really the king of New Orleans. And his name was Louis Daniel Satchmo Armstrong, and he came from the poverty of the streets of New Orleans and really went on to become an ambassador of jazz for our country. Now that's the American dream. Somebody who was born a fatherless waif, born in poverty and sold coal, and yet he went on to represent our country all over the world. You know, later when we were in the Cold War as a country, we were starting to come out of that, and somebody said, you know, we've got to figure out what we can bring over to these other countries to show them the greatness and the beauty of America, to show them what America is all about. And so somebody said, great, let's get the New York Philharmonic and we'll send them over to Russia. And they went over to Russia and they paid all this money and they sat on stage and they played Tchaikovsky. And the Russians said, well, we've heard that before, we do it better because he's one of ours. What else you got? So somebody said, whoa, send the New York City Ballet. And so they ran over there and they danced to One Lake and they came back quickly. The Russians said, we know what that is. And then somebody got smart. They said, well, why don't you send over Mahalia Jackson? Why don't you send over Dave Brubeck or Benny Goodman? Why don't you send over Duke Ellington or Count Basie? Why don't you send over Louis Armstrong? And there they got it. They understood what America was about. They understood it was about freedom, because that's what amazed them, that these musicians would stand on stage with no music and create something off the top of their head. They would watch them improvising, and watching somebody improvise is like watching somebody think on their feet. And they figure, and I've had this experience too, when you go to Europe and these countries, and you go and they say, what are you doing on there? Where's the music? And what we know is that improvisational skill that the musician has, the ability to think on his feet. See, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony is supposed to sound the same in Russia as it does in St. Louis, Missouri, as it does in Columbus, Ohio. But jazz sounds different each and every time we play. And it's that improvisational skill that is what makes America, because what they heard on that stage was the sound of freedom, where you can do what you want to, how you want to, if you work long enough and if you work hard enough. That is what jazz is, ladies and gentlemen. It's the sound of freedom, and it's the sound that blows away the world. Well, how do we get that in our own lives? How can we use the skills of jazz musicians, the same things we do every day? Well, maybe in the short amount of time I have here, I can help you understand what we do. And these are techniques that I've taught to people throughout the world. I'm going to give you 3 quick ones. And these are going to help you get the rhythm of leadership. These are 3 keys to successful musicianship. But if you apply these to your own life, you will and you must become the person and the leader that you want to be. Number one is to practice every day. What we know is that practice is the price of proficiency. Anything that you want to do well, you've got to practice it every single day. You have to shape and you have to mold and you have to sculpt it. Here's what we know. We know that repetition is the mother of skill. Those things that you do over and over and over again, and if they're not working, you take a different approach to them. But we know that you have to do those things every day. So what we do as musicians is we practice every single day. Because we know that it's that habit, it's that habit of shaping that skill that makes us the person that we want to be. So we say that first we make our habits, and then our habits make us. So form good habits and make those habits your master. So the musician uses daily practice, the skill of refining all of those things, whether we're working on the rhythm, the melody, the harmony, whether we're working on our scales. We do that every single day. It's like the dancer who goes to class every single day and they see the true reflection of themselves each and every time they practice. And that's one of the things that we have to do as we hone our skills, is see the true reflection of ourselves. So you have to set up for what we call your own practice program. Put yourself on a practice program. And what is your practice program? And how do you get feedback from it? If we know that feedback is the breakfast of champions, how do we get that feedback? When you get feedback, does it make you defensive or do you consider it? Do you cancel out anytime anybody says anything to you? Oh man, you're full of it. But we know we have to be able to receive valuable feedback. So knowing that, but also working on our skills on that daily basis. So setting up a practice program, and on the top of that list has to be reading. What are you reading? Is it mostly Facebook? Is it mostly Twitter? Or are you reading mental candy? What we know is that we should read mental protein, things that we know will get us to that next place in our career or in our endeavor. So again, we say practice every day, and it's the everyday that's important, knowing that repetition is the mother of skill. Here's the second one. In music, we call it practice listening. You know, there's a sign in the Las Vegas casino that says, "You must be present to win." Well, that's true in Las Vegas, but it's also true in your life. And so if we want to win, we have to be present. So when you talk to me, are you talking to me with your phone in your hand on email, or are you talking to me? Are you present? When you talk to me, are you looking for another more important person? Are you present with me? So the skill of listening, we know, is really, really important. In music, we focus on 3 important things. We listen to the rhythm, we listen to the melody, and we listen to the harmony. When you listen, what are you listening for? Because what we know is that it's almost impossible to learn anything with your mouth moving. Because, right, that cancels out the listening skill. So you're not listening, you're always commenting. So can we be present and become what we call attentive listeners? Attentive listeners give of themselves as they listen. In other words, you've got to give yourself to the person that's talking with no distraction. So when we have that focus, eye to eye, it's what my wife is constantly doing to me. It's like, hey, I need you here, right here, you and me. But I'm busy with something. No, you won't be busy with me right here, right now. In our daily interactions, people will love us if we can listen to them. Those of you who are in sales know that. How many salesmen have I had approach me, whether they're trying to, I go trying to buy a car, whether I go trying to, the worst place for me, I shouldn't say it, is Tivana. I love tea. You go to Tivana, you get attacked. They're not listening to me, because if you listen to me, here's what I would tell you as a salesman. Let me browse and I'll buy your whole store. But if you attack me and won't let me breathe, I am out of there. I tried to tell my car salesman the same thing. I walked out. What's your phone number? What's your address? What kind of car? Give me a second here. I want to say, blah, 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 blah. Shut up. Listen to me. Hear me. You must be present to win. So we know that not only does this apply in music, because what I want to offer you is that in 5 seconds I can help you use music to anchor yourself to that next level just by listening. By the way, we know that this has been done throughout history. That music is the thing that has always anchored people. So we talked about New Orleans, right? And when they had the terrible flood, Katrina, and all these people are in the Astrodome and the Convention Center in New Orleans, what's the first thing that they did when they're in that depth of not knowing how they're going to get out of there? There for days. What's the first thing that they did? They got together and they sang. They stood in circles and then they prayed, and then it's almost like, let's have church in the convention center because we can't use the bathrooms. There ain't no food in here. It smells. But we can sing. That's why William James of Harvard said, I sing not because I'm happy, but I'm happy because I sing. And just the mere act of you getting together and singing. But what if rather than fighting wars, we got together, we pull somebody aside and say, let's sing our songs together. Let me hear your song. It's hard to pop somebody upside the head when you listen to them sing. When they hear your song. And what is your song? Do you not have a song? Is your song just a complaint? What's the music inside you that needs to be sung? Because what we know, and Oliver Wendell Holmes told us this, that most people go to their graves with their music still inside them. Where's your music? And what is your song? Because it's time to sing your song. Because pretty soon that time's going to be going by. And will you go to your grave with your song still inside of you? It's never been sung. It begins with the skill of listening. Let me just tell you what happened during Katrina. You know, during that horrible time, people were just trying to make sense of what had happened to them in their life. So many people didn't leave New Orleans because that's their thing. They've been in a million floods. It was like, I don't leave when there's floods. My home is New Orleans. Where am I going to go? So they find themselves in this situation. So there's a guy, you know, we're waiting for our own government to respond. There's a guy that's in his house. He's on the very top because the bottom of his building is flooded. He's up next to the roof. We're in day 2. All of a sudden he hears this. Anybody in there? And this is a voice he doesn't recognize. He's like, I'm going to be quiet. I'm not going to mess with me. Cat keeps knocking. Anybody in there? You need some help? He needed help. So Fine said, yeah, I'm in here. He said, step back for a minute. And this guy took an axe and he opened up the roof. And there he found his family, and their father was right there. Father's like, finally, somebody's come to help us, thank God. He said, Who are you? Because he didn't recognize this uniform. This is a uniform that was unique to him, never seen it before. Who are you? He said, I'm from the Canadian Royal Mounties Police. He said, well, what you doing here? He said, because my identity is that we help people. I'm a policeman. We have this big ship and everything. That was my first thing. So I'm here to help you. What do you need? We can get you out of here. We've got ropes, ladders, all that kind of stuff. So really, you're from Canada? Yeah, I'm from Canada. That's what we do. That's the rhythm of leadership. By the way, what's the other options for his thing? You should know that you're not supposed to go into international waters of another country without permission. But when do you break rules? This guy said, I break rules and I don't care if I can save somebody's life. I'm close enough, I can make it to there quicker than anybody else. Do I break rules? Yeah, I don't care about rules at this point, because people are dying, people are drowning. Or do you just give a problem? Well, we're not allowed to do that because of that. Or do you go, no, this is what, this guy's identity, the guy leading this ship, said, my identity is that I help people. I don't care what the rules are, and I can save some lives. Our own government was tied up with rules, but somebody else from another country said, I don't care about that. It's to help people. That is the rhythm that you have to get in your life, whether it's a rule or not. That you march to the beat of a different drummer. That you don't do what the regular folks do. That you're extraordinary. And the extra is the part there, not ordinary, that you're extraordinary, that you're superlative, that you're absolutely excellent, that you'll stand out, that you're outstanding, that you'll do what the regular folks won't do. This is the rhythm of leadership, and this is what makes a leader. So we know we have to practice every day. We know that we have to practice listening and the skill of listening to others. Here's the final one I'll leave you with. And this is the skill that we call model the masters. It's essentially creative emulation. And this says that if somebody has done something that you want to do, find out what steps they took to get there, do the same things, and surprise, surprise, you'll get the same results. Using this technique, you can turn your decades into days. It's the great time savers. We said before, the best way to do this is to read. Because from reading, you can learn from the successes and from the failures of those who have gone before you. So become a voracious reader. Read with pen in hand. Write in the margins of your books. They should look like rainbows as you read them. Because nobody's going to tell you about this stuff. You have to go get it. When I was a kid, they used to march around and say, knowledge is power, knowledge is power. Hey, knowledge is power. I said, knowledge is not power, especially in the 21st century, because everybody has equal access to the knowledge. Some of you are browsing on the internet as we speak. So you have instant access to the knowledge, but how do you use that knowledge? Is it looking at videos of cats playing with each other? Or are you using this and then acting, this is important, acting on the learned knowledge? This is what Model the Masters is. So these are the 3 skills I leave with you. First, practice every single day. Practice listening and become an attentive listener. And number 3, find out who the great people are in your profession or in your endeavor and do what those great people have done, and surprise, surprise, you'll get the same results. Now all of this stuff works that I just gave you, and I've taught it to people around the world. And it all works if you do. But it only works if you add this final skill, and then I'm done with you. And that's the skill of self-discipline. Because you have to discipline yourself to do these specific things. And really, self-discipline is a self-enlarging process, really a way of extending our limits where we have no one to blame but ourselves for any lack of limitation. Self-discipline means doing what you know you should do, even when you don't want to do it. Right? Doing what you know you should do, even though you don't want to do it. That self-enlarging process. If you do all of those three things we talked about, and if you do them well, you will and you must become that great leader that each one of you are called to do, whether it's leading as a father, a grandfather, a mother, a brother, a sister, a trusted mentor. But it's those three skills that we know will get you there. Now, the path to getting there is tough because the place that you want to get will rarely be a straight line. Nature abhors a straight line. There's always a little twist and turn, so you'll start going towards that goal, that place that you want to go, and you take those first steps, and then you're put back like this, and you say, oh, no, hit me again, and then you pick yourself up, and you brush yourself off, and then you start all over again, and boom, it hits you again. There's that song that says, nothing's impossible I have found, for when my chin is on the ground, I pick myself up, brush myself out, and start all over again. Don't lose your confidence if you slip. Be grateful for a pleasant trip and pick yourself up, brush yourself off, start all over again. Work like a soul inspired till the battle of the day is won. You may be sick and tired, but you'll be a man, my son. Will you remember the famous men who had to fall to rise again? So pick yourself up and take a deep breath and start all over again. That happens when you don't quit. So I leave you with this. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road that you're trudging seems all up hills, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. For life is queer with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns, but many a failure turns about when he might have won had he stuck it out. So don't give up though the pace seems slow. You will succeed with another glow. Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint in the clouds of doubt, and you can never tell how close you are. It may be near, though it seems so far. So stick to the fight. No matter how hard you hit, it's when things seem worst that you must not quit. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much. Maestro Stripling, are you willing to take a question or two? Either stated or sung.
Absolutely. He loves it when you call him Maestro.
Yes,
I was wondering what else to call you. I can't think of it.
I get chills when you call me Maestro.
Okay, my pleasure.
Any questions? Yes.
What are you reading right now?
What am I reading now? Well, actually, see, I'm usually reading 5 or 6 books. So I was just telling Dan I'm reading a biography of Frank Sinatra because I'm going to do. It's going to be his 100th birthday around February, March, and we're doing a concert. So I always like to know, if I'm going to celebrate somebody, I like to know something about their lives. And with him, it's been interesting to read. I'm just about halfway through about a 500-page book. But his tenacity in getting to where he wanted to get, his willingness to do whatever it takes to make it in his career. So that's been a real learning experience for me, learning about Frank Sinatra. Jerry.
In the good old days, you could find jazz being played in cocktail lounges all over the place. Why not now?
Because they don't pay anything. Now, there's an economic thing to anything. The big band, maybe I can use the mic.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You should realize that if you were born in like 1921, right now you're probably in your 90s. If you were born in 1921, when it was 1940s, during the big band era, that's the music of your life. Does everybody get that? The music of like when you fell in love and you were beginning to be so in touch with so many things that were becoming important to your life. There were certain songs that are anchors for you. So when you hear In the Mood and Chattanooga Choo Choo, that's your music. So we started the Jazz Arts Group in 1975. You're in your 50s, now you have income, you have a pretty steady job. You're even beginning to think about retiring, and you've got money in your pocket. It's like, I'm gonna go see the Columbus Jazz Orchestra because those guys play my music. And they used to play it in these small clubs. The economy was different. But see, as musicians, we're often asked, always asked, to do things for free usually. And we have to make a living too. So when people ask me that, I'll just say, look, I'll do you a favor. Whatever you're paying the caterer, I'll take half. Because they've already gotten the caterer, they've gotten the person to decorate their cake, they've rented the room, they've done everything, and that last call is to something that they think is real important, but they're not willing to pay for it. So if you think of the economics of playing in a bar, just to give you a quick economic lesson, that they say, we're going to charge everybody $10 to get in and the place holds 30 people. Well, you already lost me there, but we're going to have drinks, but we want to get the drink revenue. Well, then I'm only going to make 10 times 30, and I got to pay 5 people or 6 people, so the economics doesn't always work out, especially the bigger the group. So, but that, I mean, that's a weird answer to what you asked. The love of artists will always play because they have to. You've heard people talk about in the ministry, I was called. Musicians are the same thing. There's a calling that brings you, there's that yearning, and there's that pull that you have to, because what we know as musicians is that we provide food for the soul, valuable nourishment for the community. When they had, I was almost going to tell you the story, when they had the civil rights movement, one of the things that Martin Luther King did is he said, you know, when they had the Montgomery bus boycott back in the day, he said, you know, we're going to have church every single night to motivate people to walk to work every day rather than take the bus. The only way we can anchor them is to have church every night, but I'm not going to really speak a lot. It's going to really be about what? We talked about it with Katrina. It's going to be about us singing together. And what did they sing? They sang songs like, I'm going to move on up a little higher. I ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. They sang songs that uplifted them and inspired them. And so then, as they walked to work, that song was still in their hearts. It was still with them. So my thought is that lady that was walking to work for 45 minutes to an hour, back and forth, when she walked, the thing that gave her the strength was that she had a song in her heart. Back then, one of the guys from the newspaper, he was trying to sort of start a little trouble. He used to scream out and say, hey man, aren't you getting tired? Isn't it hard walking every day to work? This is a boycott that went on a really long time. She said, well sir, my feet are tired, but my soul is rested. That's because she had a song in her heart. It was the music that carried her through.
Yeah, last question.
Do you have an individual instrument, or what do you play? How many?
I play the trumpet, and that's really hard because I just had 2 teeth pulled.
Oh, I think.
And my dentist said, don't play for 2 days, otherwise I normally, I usually start with the trumpet and play something for people, but today I'm too nervous to because I just had my teeth pulled last week. But my instrument is the trumpet, and I also sing a little bit when Dan lets me.
Very good. Final question. Dan.
Where can these fine people see you perform next?
On Friday, go to the Columbus Zoo, right on the water there. It's the last one, yeah. And a lot of people cheat and they pull their boats up on the side of the river, and they get to listen for free. But it's a great venue. We're doing a concert called Billy Joel, Elton John, and some rock and roll. And so those are the people that we hope that you'll enjoy. It's always a great experience. We have 17 people on stage. We'll have a special guest, artist named Dave Powers, and a guy who normally plays with Dr. John is going to be joining us. He's in the band. His name is Bobby Floyd. He's in a special guest appearance because he was able to get away from Dr. John. So we encourage you to see us on Friday, and I'll be there. And if you come, I promise that I'll kiss you in the lips.
Mac Revenue.
Now if you don't have the teeth, that's fine.
If I have my teeth, it's cool. I'll put them in before I kiss you.
Excellent. Thank you very much.